your book distribution today?
It was pretty good. The group did much more, so it was successful, I'd say.
Nice. That's awesome. Thank you for joining my Yuri Akshaj. Nice to see you, Chaitanya Nitai.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Oh, you guys are in the same group.
Yeah.
Nice to see you and your sister. All right. So, like always, before we begin UGEM, we'll start with a little prayer. I'll send some links in the chat if you want to follow us on social media or have any questions, etc. But if not, would anyone like to nominate someone for a prayer today? Okay, Amba. And Mayuri nominated you, and then Chitni Nitai has seconded it. Are you able to unmute and make a prayer, Amba?
Hare Krishna. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes. Sorry, I was on mute. I'm in the car, but I can say the prayer. What am I supposed to say?
Sure. Yeah, we put the format in the chat. Anything that you'd like to, but it's like my dear, and then your Didi's name, and then if you so desire, and you can put your prayer, and then thank you for considering my request.
All right. My dear Shri Shri Radha Shamsundar and Radha Madhava, if you desire, if you what am I supposed to say? If I desire, I forgot the last part.
Yeah, if you so desire, and then you can say your prayer.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amba. No greater prayer than the Mahamantra. Thank you. Thank you for reminding us that.
Yes, of course.
Yes. All right. Thank you. And we'll start with Chad for today, which is our chapter of the day. So I'll hand it to Chaitanya Nitainam to lead us to that.
Hare Krishna. We'll do our Chad recitation of chapter 10 from the Bhagavad Gita. I'll pull up the screen share in just a second. All right, hopefully everyone can see my screen. Is it visible?
Still loading, but yeah, now we can see it.
All right. As usual, since we have a small group, I'll recite the Sanskrit shlokas and then we can go back and read the translations, taking turns. So everyone for now can recite behind their muted mics. Vedanam Samavedosmi Devanam Asmi Vasavaha Indriyanam Manashchasmi Bhutanam Asmi Chetana Rudranam Shankarashchasmi Vittesho Yaksharakshasam Vasunam Pavakaschasmi Merushikharinamaham Purodhasam च मुख्यं मां विधि पार्थ बृहस्पतिं सेनानीनामहं स्कन्धः सरसामस्मि सागरः महर्षीणां भृगुरहं गिराम् अस्म्येकमक्षरं यज्ञानां जपयज्ञोऽस्मि स्थावराणां हिमालयः अश्वत्थः सर्ववृक्षाणां देवर्षीणां च नारदः गन्धर्वाणां चित्ररथः सिद्धानां कपिलो मुनिः उच्चैश्रवसमश्वानां विद्धि माम् अमृतोद्भवम् ऐरावतं गजेन्द्राणां नराणां च नराधिपम् आयुधानाम् अहं वज्रं धेनूनाम् अस्मि कामधुक् प्रजनश्चास्मि गन्धर्वः सर्पाणाम् अस्मि वासुकिः अनन्तश्चास्मि नागानां वरुणो यादसामहं पितॄणाम् अर्यमा चास्मि यमः संयमतामहम् प्रह्लादश्चास्मि दैत्यानां कलयतामहं मृगाणां च मृगेन्दोऽहं वैनतेयश्च पक्षिणाम् भवनः भवतामस्मि रामशस्त्रभृतामहं झषाणां मकरश्चास्मि स्रोतसामस्मि जाह्नवी सर्गाणाम् आदिरन्तश्च मध्यं चैवाहमर्जुन अध्यात्मविद्या विद्यानां वादप्रवदतामहम् अक्षराणाम् अकारोऽस्मि द्वन्द्वसामासिकस्य च अहम् एवाक्षयः कालो धाताहं विश्वतोमुखः मृत्युः सर्वहरश्चाहम् उद्भवश्च भविष्यताम् कीर्तिश्रीर्वाक्श्च नारीणां स्मृतिर्मेधा धृतिक्षमा बृहत्साम तथा साम्नां गायत्री छन्दसामहं मासानां मार्गशीर्षोऽहं ऋतूनां कुसुमाकरः द्यूतं चलयतामस्मि तेजस्तेजस्विनामहं जयोऽस्मि व्यवसायोऽस्मि सत्त्वं सत्त्ववतामहम् वृष्णीनां वासुदेवोऽस्मि पाण्डवानां धनञ्जयः मुनीनाम् अप्यहं व्यासः कवीनाम् उशना कविः दण्डो दमयतामस्मि नीतिरस्मि जिगीषतां मौनं चैवास्मि गुह्यानां ज्ञानं ज्ञानवतामहम् यच्चापि सर्वभूतानां बीजं तदहमर्जुन न तद् अस्ति विनाश्यत्स्यान् मया भूतं चराचरम् नान्तोऽस्ति मम दिव्यानां विभूतीनां परन्तप एष तूद्देश्यतः प्रोक्तो विभूतेर्विस्तरो मया यद्यद्विभूतिमत्सत्त्वं श्रीमद् वा तत्तदेवावगच्छत्वं मम तेजोंशसम्भवम् अथवा बहुनैतेन किं ज्ञातेन तवार्जुन विष्टव्याहम् इदं कृत्स्नम् एकांशेन स्थितो जगत्. All right, we'll go back to the translations, and if we could get some volunteers to read translations. There you go, Imanya, Amba. Let's get a few more. Mayuri and Sakipinda. All right. You guys can read 5 translations each. Manya, go ahead.
Of the Vedas, I am the Samaveda. Of the demigods, I am Indra, the king of heaven. Of the senses, I am the mind, and in living beings, I am the living force, consciousness. Of all the Rudras, I am Lord Shiva. Of the Yakshas and Rakshasas, I am the Lord of wealth, Kuvera. Of the Vasus, I am fire, Agni, and of mountains, and I am Meru. Of priests, O Arjuna, know me to be the chief, Brihaspati. Of generals, I am Kartikeya, and of bodies of water, I am the ocean. Of the great sages, I am Bhrigu. Of vibrations, I am the transcendental Om. Of sacrifices, I am the chanting of the holy names, Japa, and of immovable things, I am the Himalayas. Of all trees, I am the banyan tree, and of the sages among the demigods, I am Narada. Of the Gandharvas, I am Chitraratha, and among perfected beings, I am the sage Kapila. I think that was 5.
Amba, go ahead.
Of horses know me to be Uchitsarva, produced during the churning of the ocean for nectar. Of lordly elephants, I am Airavata, and among men, I'm the monarch. Of weapons, I'm the thunderbolt. Among cows, I am the Surbi of causes. For
Now turn left on
procreation, I'm Gandharva, the god of love, and of serpents, I'm Vasuki. Of the many hooded Nagas, I'm Ananta, and among the aquatics, and the demigod Varuna of departed ancestors, I'm Yama, and among the disappearance of law, I'm Yama, the Lord of Death. Among the Daita demons and the devoted Prahlada, among subduers, I am time among beasts. I'm the lion, and among birds, I'm Garuda. Of purifiers, and the wind of the wielders of weapons, I am Rama of fishes. I'm the shark and of flowing rivers. I am the Ganges.
Of all creations and the beginning and the end, and also the middle, O Arjuna. Of all sciences and the spiritual science of the self, and among logicians and the conclusive truth. Of letters and the letter A, and among compound words and dual compound. I am also inexhaustible time, and of creators I am Brahma. I am all-devouring death, and I am the generating principle of all that is yet to be. Among women I am fame, fortune, fine speech, memory, intelligence, steadfastness, and patience. Of the hymns in the Samaveda I am the Brihat Sama, of poetry I am Gayatri, of months I am Margashirsha, November to December, and of seasons I am flower-bearing spring. I am also the gambling of cheats, and of the splendid I am the splendor. I am victory, I am adventure, and I am the strength of the strong.
Of the descendants of Vishnu, I am Vasudeva, and of the Pandavas, I am Arjuna. Of the sages, I am Vyasa, and among great thinkers, I am Usashana. Among all means of suppressing lawlessness, I am punishment, and of those who seek victory, I am morality. Of secret things, I am silence, and of the wise, I am the wisdom. Furthermore, O Arjuna, I am the generating seed of all existences. There is no being, moving or non-moving, that can exist without me. O mighty conqueror of enemies, there is no end to my divine manifestations. What I have spoken to you is but a mere indication of my infinite opulences. Know that all opulent, beautiful, and glorious creations spring from but a spark of my splendor. But what need is there, Arjuna, for all this detailed knowledge? With a single fragment of myself, I pervade and support this entire universe.
Thank you, Saki, Vrinda, and everyone else who read. As always, this is a great chapter to focus and meditate upon. And since we have some time, I think we can look at maybe a purport of one of these verses. Does that sound like a good idea? Saki, Vrinda, how about you choose a number between 22 and 42?
28.
28, okay. Let's take a look. Pull it up in just a second. All right. Seems like a pretty short purport, but Saki, Vrinda, if you wanted to go ahead and read the translation and purport.
Translation. Of weapons I am the thunderbolt, among cows I am the surabhi, of causes for procreation I have Kandarpa, the god of love, and of serpents I am Vasuki. Purport. The thunderbolt, indeed a mighty weapon, represents Krishna's power. In Krishnaloka in the spiritual sky, there are cows which can be milked at any time, and they give as much as milk as one likes. Of course, such cows do not exist in this material world, but there is mention of them in Krishnaloka. The Lord keeps many such cows, which are called surabhi. It is stated that the Lord is engaged in herding the surabhi cows. Kandharpa is a sex desire for presenting good sons. Therefore, Kandharpa is a representative of Krishna. Sometimes sex is engaged in only for sense gratification. Such sex does not represent Krishna. But sex for the generation of good children is called Kandharpa and represents Krishna.
Thank you, Saki, Vrinda. Any takeaways? Either you had Any reflections or just anything you liked about the verse, the purport, anything?
I think that it's always nice to hear about some of the details in Krishna Loka and just to like compare it to the material world and how blissful it is there.
Right? We have so many things that we say the material world is the perverted reflection of the spiritual world, and that means there's so many things that we're lacking qualitatively. Although we can also say that there's a lot of, I guess, copies of what we can expect to see in the spiritual world, what we could expect based on the descriptions that we see in the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavatam. There's so many good qualities and desirable qualities, really, that we would love to see in the spiritual world one day. Anyone else have any reflections, thoughts, things they like to share? Maybe they learned something from this purport.
I didn't know that the thunderbolt represents Krishna. That was really interesting.
Yeah, I think we see in the description of when Krishna and Balaram go to Mathura to kill Kamsa. Well, they attend the wrestling festival or the wrestling championship. He uh, markets to them, and eventually they kill Kamsa. And it's written in the Srimad Bhagavatam that in that chapter, Krishna is dealing with some other people in the city, such as the devotee, the hunchbacked woman, and it describes that, and with the one of the royal guards who's taking care of the royal clothing and the laundry and everything. And we see that Krishna is described as being like a thunderbolt to people who are unfavorable, like demons like Krishna and that guy with the laundry. He was gatekeeping these royal clothes because he saw Krishna and Balaram wearing the attire of villagers from Gokul. And he was like, no, this isn't for you. This is for the royal people, like the kings. And so Krishna immediately killed him. And then he killed Kamsa as well and the other wrestlers. And so Krishna is like a thunderbolt toward people who are unfavorable, people who have demonic mentalities. And he's like I think the description is that he's like a flower otherwise, just very sweet and, blissful to the devotees. But he's like a thunderbolt to especially the demons. So that kind of reminder in this verse and purport, it's very effective, and I think it's at least establishing, as this whole chapter does, what Krishna is among all other things. So yeah, thank you for pointing that out, Manya. All right. If no one else has anything to share about the verse, then we can move on to the next part of our program, which is, although Kartik is over, we haven't finished our commentary reflections on the Damodarashtakam, which we used to sing every day of Kartik. And up to last week, we were doing the reflections and commentary of Srila Sanatan Goswami on the Damodarashtakam. And so, since we didn't get to finish, although Kartik is over, we wanted to really finish verses 7 and 8, which we haven't been able to cover yet. So we'll do that this week and then officially wrap up Kartik month as a whole. But first, we'll ask Adriraj to sing the last two verses of the Damodar Ashtakam, verses 7 and 8. Let me pull them up real quick.
Yes, we will be first reciting these, and I'll recite them, and I encourage everyone, as usual, to also recite the verses and read the translations behind your muted mics. So we just wait for it to load. Okay, so we'll read the verses as well as the translations. Kuveratmajo bata mutyayvayadvat Tvayamocito bhakti bhajo krito cha ततः प्रेम भक्तिं स्वकामे प्रयच्छ न मोक्षे ग्रहो मेऽस्ति दामोदरेह. O Lord Damodar, just as the two sons of Kuvera, Manigriv and Nalakuvara, were delivered from the curse of Narada and made into great devotees by you in your form as a baby, tied with rope to a wooden grinding mortar, in the same way, please give to me your own Prema Bhakti. I only long for this and have no desire for any kind of liberation. Namaste Dhamne Spuradhiptidamne Tvadhiyodharaya Vishwasya Dhamne Namo Radhikaya Tvadhiya Priyaya Namo Nantalilaya Devaya Tubhyam. O Lord Damodar, I first of all offer my obeisances to the brilliantly effulgent rope which binds your belly. I then offer my obeisances to your belly, which is the abode of the entire universe. I humbly bow down to your most beloved Srimati Radharani, and I offer all obeisances to you, the Supreme Lord, who displays unlimited pastimes. Shri Shri Radha Damodar Ki Jai. Thank you, everyone, for reciting these with us. And we will soon go into the commentary by Sanatan Goswami, as Chaitanya Nityanam said. But before we do that, we're going to play a quick game. And it is, once we get that on, it is the emoji game, which you may be familiar with, but it's Karthik themed this time, just so that we can reflect on the whole month that we've just had, so that we can remember the past times that have happened. So we will get started. We'll just look at the emojis that come one at a time, and you can raise your hand if you think you know what it is, or put it in the chat. So yeah, we can go to the first emoji. These are the first emojis. So these emojis can either be pastimes or leelas, or they can be practices that we see in our own lives. So I'm already seeing some answers. I'm seeing Navya and Mayuri both saying Govardhan Leela as well as Arav. And that is correct. This is Govardhan Puja. So yeah, the next one is this. Does anyone have any guesses as to what this could be? It's kind of a concept that's seen in part of one of the Leelas of this month. Okay, I'm seeing Manya, Arav, Mayuri in the chat saying 2 fingers short in the rope, endeavor plus mercy to please Krishna. And that is correct. So this is kind of the concept where the rope was always 2 fingers short, but when Krishna saw Mother Yashoda's love and he also extended his mercy, she was able to tie the rope around him. Good job, everyone. The next one is this. Mayuri says Indra. Yeah, it's kind of, maybe we can try to get a little bit more specific, but it's related to Indra. So you're on the right track. Maybe we can say like what part of the pastimes or what moment this could be. Manya says Govardhan Puja. So yeah, I think we kind of worked together and got the correct answer, which is that Indra's pride gets defeated during the Govardhan Puja. Yeah. Okay. This is a fun one. Arif says, Krishna butter monkeys. He feeds the monkeys. Sia says, Krishna feeding the butter to the monkeys. Yeah, this is correct. Yep, everyone is on the right track. So this is Krishna stealing the butter and sharing it with the monkeys. Good job. And the next one. What do we think for this one? Arav says trees fall. Krishna knocks over the trees, pulling the grinding mortar between the trees. Yeah, I think we're all thinking of the correct pastime. And this is where Krishna pulls down the two Arjuna trees and makes them fall. That's correct. Ooh, this is interesting. This is a good one. A little bit more difficult than the previous few we've seen, but I think Navya says Tulsi's marriage. Okay, yeah, that's on the right track. Does anyone know the name of this festival? Chaitanya Nityanam says Tulsi Shaligram Vivaha. Yes, that's correct. Yeah, so this is another festival that happens during Damodar month. And then the next one. This is a fun one. Anyone have any ideas on what this one could be? This is also another festival that happens. So think about all the festivals we've celebrated in the past few weeks and what we've seen. Akshita says Gopashtami, which is exactly correct. This is Gopashtami where Radharani changes her dress and appears like a Gopa so that she can associate with Krishna. That's correct. The next one, this one's interesting. Any ideas what this one could be? Yep, Arav says Bhishma Panchak. And that is correct. This is Bhishma Dev lying on a bed of arrows, and we celebrate that through Bhishma Panchak, the last 5 days of Kartik. Next one. Ooh, this one's interesting. Do we have any ideas of what this one could be? I'm getting Diwali, but this is not actually Diwali. It's a different pastime. But that's a good guess. It's from Krishna Lila, and it's a pastime of Krishna. Chaitanya Nityanam suggests demon kidnapped princesses. Yeah, maybe we can look at the answer for this one. This one is a little bit more of a difficult one, but this one is Krishna killing Narakasura and rescuing the princesses. So yeah, this one was a little bit more hidden of a pastime, I would say. Yeah. Okay. This one is fun. Any guesses as to what this one could be?
Looks like a lot of water. So probably has to do something with a water body.
Yeah. I think, yeah, if we think about water, bodies of water, what could be prominent? This is a pastime in, it's like a pastime at a festival that happens in this month. Mayuri says Jamuna. Hmm. That's kind of one aspect of it, but maybe we can show the answer for this one. All the rivers come together. Think about the kunds. Yeah. So this one is the appearance of Radha Kund and Shyam Kund. Yes, Akshita and Mayuri got it last minute. So yeah, all the rivers come together and the gopis and Krishna create these two beautiful kunds that we can visit today and meditate upon. Ooh, this one is a simple one. Yeah, the appearance of Radhakund and Shyamkund is during Kartik. I believe it's also on the same day as Bahulashtami, so that's kind of a fun fact. Okay, I'm getting Damodar Arti. I got one guess for Diwali. There's kind of two aspects to this, and I think we encapsulated it in Damodar Arti. So there's offering the lamps and also singing Damodar Ashtakam. So yeah, good job, everyone. And then I think this is the last one. This is kind of a more than a pastime. This is more of a practice that we see commonly done. I got a guess for Bahulashtami. Worshipping of cows. So yeah, this is decorating and worshipping cows with flowers. And this happens a lot, especially in India. It happens on like Govardhan Puja, Go Puja. Bahulashtami is also a time, Gopashtami. So there's a lot of importance around cow worship that happens in general during the month of Kartik. So yeah, that was our emoji game, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it made you think of some of the pastimes and practices that we've had during Kartik. And we're excited to do it all again next year. So now we will move on to reading the commentary, like we mentioned earlier. And so Chaitanya Nitayanam and Manya will be able to lead us through that.
Hare Krishna. I'll pull up the slides for the commentary. All right. We should be loading. All right. Well, to resume our analysis of Srila Sanatana Goswami's commentary on the Damodar Ashtakam, we're going to look at verse 7 because we left off on verse 6 last week. And as we just went over before the the emoji game, Adriraj had beautifully sung the two verses. This first verse is Kuverat Majau Badha Muchevat Vayatva and so forth. So as that first word itself of the verse mentions, it's referring to the two sons of Kuvera, who's the demigod slash yaksha of wealth. Uh, and his two sons were in a past time before the Damodar Leela. They were cursed by Sage Narada to be standing as trees, specifically in that location in the courtyard of Nanda Maharaj's house in Gokul. And so in the previous verses, we see the author of the Damodar Ashtakam, Satyavrata Muni, he's praying to the form of Sri Damodar intently to he's filled with intense longing and humility and these just deep emotions of wanting to see and be able to worship that form of the Lord. And in this verse, he remembers the specific pastime of Krishna as Damodar in that little form as a baby, pulling down the two trees with the mortar and thus liberating those two sons of Kubera. So he recalls how the two sons of Kubera were standing as trees, and then they're delivered by Krishna ultimately because of that uh, pastime. And in fact, Narada was, when he was cursing them, they also begged for forgiveness, but he said, I can't forgive you, only Krishna can do that. And so Krishna later came as we all know, in this form as a baby, who's at that point already tied to the mortar. And we've seen this in the previous verses of the Damodar Ashtakam that describe this whole event where Yashoda is catching him stealing and eating butter and feeding it to the monkeys, and then chasing him around the courtyard, and then tries to tie him, kind of struggles, and then finally is able to tie him with his own mercy and her own endeavor. And once he's tied up, now he's wandering around with the mortar tied to him, or he's tied to the mortar rather, but he's pulling it around because that's how strong he is. And so he liberates Kubera's two sons, Manigriva and Nalakuvara. And this is what translates to Kuvera Atmajo Badhamurtya. So Kuvera Atmajo means the two sons of Kuvera. Badhamurtya is nothing but the form that is bound by the mortar or to the mortar. So that's referring to the form of Krishna. But the important question is, why is this pastime important? Like, why is the sage who's writing this remembering this specific aspect of that pastime? Because so forth, until now we saw how Krishna is dealing with the gopis and Mother Yashoda in a more loving exchange. So why is this pastime, which is a little more superficial in terms of emotion and exchanges, why is it so important? Well, we see how Krishna liberates them and gives them freedom. And ultimately, the sage reflects on this and realizes Krishna, who's in this form as a baby, and babies don't generally have control over anything because they're always under the control of their caregivers, the parents or whoever else. And so Krishna is seemingly dependent on Mother Yashoda's actions and caretaking. So he's bound to this mortar and he's stuck. And even in such a state, he's able to give liberation to Manigriva and Lalakuvara. So what to speak of when he's not bound? He, as we saw in the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, he's the source of everything and can give ultimate liberation and any benediction you want. But as we saw in the previous verses of this Damodar Ashtakam as well as the Satyavrata Muni, he said he didn't want any of these boons or benedictions. But we see he reflects on Manigriva and Nolakuvara as the recipients of not just a deliverance or some sort of mundane liberation, but actually pure loving devotional service, which is known as Prema Bhakti. And that's what Sanatan Goswami also writes in his commentary. And Satyavrata Rishi feels unworthy and like an offender. That's what's written, at least. Um, and although he feels so unworthy and not deserving of any sort of mercy from Krishna, he still prays because he has that confidence that Krishna can give anything, he can fulfill the impossible. So he still prays for similar merciful deliverance through that same form of loving devotion or prema bhakti. And that's what we see when he says, Yadvad, continuing the previous verse, Tvaya mochito bhakti bhajo krito cha. So the ability to be able to love and worship Krishna in that way through pure devotion and unalloyed devotion. That's what pure means. He's not looking for any other uh, benediction or reward, or he has no ulterior motive. And that's what he's expressing throughout this entire song, which is the most special aspect of it, which is especially coming out in this verse. And yeah, as I said, it represents his confidence that Krishna's affection is so glorious, he can make anything happen. And we see why exactly in the next part of this slide. Well, we can say when Satyavrata Muni, who's among the greatest of devotees, as we can see through his writing and his devotion, he's praying, "O Damodar, in the same way as how you liberated the sons of Kuvera. In that same way, please give me the devotion by which your lotus feet become the exclusive focus of my life. Not a side focus or like every Tuesday or anything, but the exclusive focus." And so to even reach that level of understanding, first of all, it's very important, but he praised this way and then praised for that special benediction of just having prema bhakti. Tata prema bhaktim swakame prayacha. He's asking Damodar to give him that prema bhakti, uh, which represents the same sort of uh, giving of prema bhakti to the sons of Kubera. And in this response, I've never thought about this aspect specifically, but Sanatan Goswami writes, the Lord may suggest, why do you neglect liberation? Because he was saying early in the verse, in the song, I don't want any other benediction, I don't want liberation or anything like that. But Krishna might ask, why don't you want liberation? Because the only way you can reach my abode and come back to personally interact with me is through liberation. Otherwise, you'll keep taking birth and death and just be trapped in this cycle. So he's asking, he might suggest to a prospective devotee like that, you can accept liberation along with devotion. But Satyavrata Muni says, I don't care about any of that. So he just wants devotion, 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 nothing else. He doesn't want liberation or anything else. So he says, I'm longing for devotion, not for liberation, O Lord Damodara. That's Namokshe Graho Mesti Damodara. And the Lord Krishna, he's wondering maybe I'm bound by love, to this mortar. This is all Sanatan Goswami's expert writing and understanding of this Leela, but he's writing that Krishna may be feeling I'm bound by love to this mortar, right? Because he's bound with Yashoda's love. So do you want me to keep being bound by devotion forever? Is that what you want? And it's like a sort of uh I don't want to say rhetorical question, but it's like a challenge to the devotee who might be asking suspiciously for just devotion and nothing else. And what else do you really want? And so the sage really says, no, I don't want anything else. But if that's your concern, I'm both longing for devotion in order to free you from those ropes of that are binding you of devotion. So please just give me loving devotion unto you and here in Vrindavan. So that way there's no he's checked all the boxes. He has nothing else to address because now he has established that he's looking for association with Krishna in Vrindavan and he just wants devotion, nothing else. And so that's the beauty of this whole verse. And of course, the last verse is probably the most beautiful because we see glorification of Damodar and of course Srimati Radharani, and then hand it off to Manya to explain that.
Thank you, Chaitanya Nityanand, for that great explanation. Yeah, so we'll move on to the last verse, which feels bittersweet that we're almost coming to an end of these series, but I'm excited. So now we're shifting our focus, and the writer is offering obeisances to the brilliantly effulgent rope that binds Krishna's belly, and then the belly, which is the abode of the entire universe. So I bow down to this magnificent rope, source of dazzling light, which binds your belly. So namaste. So namaste means like you are offering respects. Namaste sudamne. Um, and then damne means unto the rope that's around your waist. And spurit means splendorous. And when we say Deepti Dhamne, that means unto the effulgent abode. So Deepti is also like effulgent, and Dham is like Krishna's abode. Namaste Sudhamne Spurit Deepti Dhamne. Tvadyodharayatha Vishvasya Dhamne. So Vishvasya means the entire universe. And Tvadyodharaya means like unto your belly. So when Mother Yashoda, Sanatana Goswami says that when Mother Yashoda binds Krishna, she's not only binding him, but she's binding all the moving and non-moving objects that are in his belly, and the lotus that contains all the 14 planets. Um, and that springs from Krishna's abdomen. And Mother Yashoda is evoking also the universal form about 2 times it's shown to Mother Yashoda. So by fastening Krishna's belly, she's basically before she was surprised about the universal form when she saw it in her mouth, but now she has caught hold of Krishna, and it's so hard to get a hold of the universe, and Krishna is the one that holds the universe. So by binding Mother Yashoda is fastening the universe as well. And this is because of her affection for Krishna and Krishna's mercy to his devotee, his devotee, that he's letting her bind him. So it's not like, oh, Krishna is such a loser god. Look at him. He's like bound by his mom like that. It's funny. But it's really not like that. And Krishna is allowing Mother Yashoda to bind him, and Mother Yashoda obviously has her endeavor and mercy as well. So another interesting thing that Sanatana Goswami says, that he first offers obeisances to the rope and then the belly to show like the superior status of, so you start, 'cause in the translation you're starting with the rope, and then you're starting with and then you're going with the belly, the position of the rope over the tied abdomen, to express the superior status of the belly of Krishna. If that makes sense. Sorry, that was a little confusing. And then I can go. And then it talks about Srimati Radharani. So whenever we talk about Krishna, it's so hard not to talk about Srimati Radharani. So it's done here in a more secluded way, I guess, when it talks about Namo Nanta Lilaya Devaya Tubhyam. But first, he offers obeisances to, not obedience, that should be obeisances, to Srimati Radharani, knowing that by the mercy of the most dear associate of the Lord, every desire, albeit unrealistic, may be fulfilled. So if you've seen how Srimati Radharani is on the altar, a lot of times she's carrying a flower or something. That gesture has so much importance because she's not just carrying a garland or a flower or any other object. She's actually carrying the garland that we're giving. So our garland to Radharani, and then Radharani gives it to Krishna. So she's taking our bhakti and presenting it to Krishna and telling him, okay, I know this person has done a lot of sins, but he's not too bad. He's not too bad. And that's how Krishna is accepting our offering. So we can't go to Krishna without the mercy of Radharani. That's why this verse is so important. Offering obeisances to Srimati Radharani, which is best devotee of Krishna. And then Namo Radhikaya Tvadiya Praya, Namo Nanta Lilaya Devaya Tubhyam. So Ananta Lilaya means unto your limitless pastimes. So here it's also mentioning the Rasa Lila and all the Gokula pastimes of Krishna. So we're bowing down to that. So yeah, Krishna is a performer of unlimited pastimes. I bow down to the Divine One whose pastimes are also divine. And yeah, Namo Ananta Lilaya Devaya Tupyam. And then it's saying, I bowed down to the Divine One whose pastimes are also divine. And then otherwise the meaning is, you're absorbed in eternal pastimes with Sri Radhika, therefore I bow down to you. So it's kind of like, you are dear to Radharani, so I bow down to you. It's kind of flipping it. Having this indicated the whole Gokula pastime, I bow down to it. So here, uh, the speaker is wishing to close, I'm reading from the commentary, wishing to close with the supreme glorification of Radha and Krishna's pastimes, such as the Rasa Leela. But to keep it confidential at the same time, he concludes with this small gesture, saying that I bow down to all your pastimes in Gokula, and that this is the orientation of the purport. So, yes, that is the end of the commentary. I think what we took away, or I took away from this verse, is that nothing can be possible without the mercy of Krishna's devotees, especially Srimati Radharani. And Krishna's pastimes are non-different than him. So remembering all his pastimes can help us connect us to his devotees and Krishna. Damodar Lila Ki Jai. Thank you everyone for listening through that. That was a lot. So I'm just gonna open it up for any reflections you have from anything you heard today you want to share, or if not, you can also share any general reflections you have or questions and anything you want to share with the group. So yeah. Arv, go ahead.
Hare Krishna. So we see Srila Sanatan Goswami give his commentary about these pastimes going on in Vrindavan. And I believe he is in Vrindavan at this time. So, and Sanatan Goswami, every part of this is glorious. The Damodar Ashtakam itself is glorious. Satyavrata Rishi is also very glorious for writing this. Of course, Sri Sri Radha Damodara are very glorious themselves because they're the Lord. And then the commentator on this, Srila Sanatan Goswami, is also very glorious. And we see that uh, Satyavrata Rishi doesn't pray for liberation, and he only prays for bhakti. And that's how we should be in this material world. Because if we pray for liberation, we're not a devotee. Because if we just pray for liberation, then we won't receive Krishna's mercy. Because if we love him, then he loves us. And then also, I heard one time that when Krishna was freeing Nalakuber and Manigriv, that the reason why he did it is because Sri Narad Muni had cursed them, and the devotee's word always comes true. So that is, I felt just, I was just noticing.
Thank you, Arav. I like what you said about how a devotee's words comes true and that you get special mercy from that. I did want to add though, I heard this a few weeks ago, and one of the lectures that Vaisheshika Prabhu was giving on principles of determination, he talked about starting from your natural strength, knowing that where you are at. And I was thinking that, yes, we know that the ideal is that we don't want to ask for liberation and we want to be in that pure stage of devotional service. But I was just thinking that it's okay to admit that we want liberation if that's where we're at. Because and people can correct me, maybe we can find something from Shastra about this, because I feel like it's not a black and white, you won't get Krishna's mercy if you ask for liberation. You know, I was just thinking about that, how Krishna accepts where we're at, and we can just pray, like, Krishna, I really want devotional service. I'm just not there yet, and I need you to help me. This is what I want, and kind of go from that. But yeah, I was wondering if anybody had Any other thoughts, or if you wanted to put a verse that we could look at so we're not guessing our way. I'll also do some research. Let's see. Chetan and Nityanam, do you have anything to add? It doesn't have to be from the point I made. You can say anything you want.
No, I really like Ira's point that it's a really good observation and I think a really good lesson as well that both the importance of the word of the devotee and how much importance not just we should give, but how much importance Krishna gives. I mean, we see in various pastimes, Krishna ultimately has to jump through some hoops to just to keep the word of his devotee. Like Brahma gave that boon to Hiranyakashipu or Hiranyaksha. Shiva gave some boon to Vrikasura and all such demons, but still, regardless of who it is, because they're his pure devotees, he has to uh, act accordingly and making it true and the significance especially of this pastime among those other ones because we don't really look at Nrsimhadev or Varahadev as oh these cute little lovable incarnations, but we see them as more fearful. And but Krishna doing this enacting this Leela of Damodar with Mother Yashoda and then afterward with Nalakuvar and Manigriva, I think it justifies how much we can actually take seriously the words of devotees in general because it's not that, and of course, like as Manya was pointing out, we should also consult Shastra, but Shastra is nothing but the exchanges, really. Like we see Srimad Bhagavatam, we see how many exchanges take place between Krishna and another devotee, or between devotees. Of course, the entire recitation is between Shukadev Goswami and Maharaj Parikshit, who are both devotees. But the point is, I think, how much value we can find in simply listening to devotees. I think I really picked up on that point from what Arav was sharing. So just wanted to appreciate that. And as for the point, Manya, I think you were trying to make, I haven't found anything, or I can't think of anything that uh, specifically says, um, you have to be at a certain level. Of course, common knowledge, it is kind of a pure devotee, like more or shastric evidences point toward pure devotee qualities. So what a pure devotee might uh, demonstrate or exhibit. And so I think there's one verse in the Bhagavatam in the second chapter of Savaipum Sampara Dharmo Yato Bhaktira Dokshaje Ayutakriya Pratihata Yayatma Suprasthiti. I think man can attain to loving devotional service with complete surrender, and it has to be unmotivated, uninterrupted. And we see that example with Satyavrata Muni. And I think, I'm not sure, I don't want to guess, but it might be the same verse or maybe a different one I'm misremembering, but the purport, I think, points to this idea that a pure devotee will accept any sort of fate, just like Satyavrata Muni was expressing in the comment or in the translations.
Mm.
So, yeah, anyway.
Thank you. That was a very thorough explanation. I tried to do some research as well, and I found this article on ISKCON Desire Tree. I'll send the link here if anybody wants to take a look. But it talks about liberation from the desire of liberation, which is really interesting. What I concluded from these verses is that liberation is not a problem, but that the devotee does not desire liberation. So even if we're making a prayer to Krishna and telling him where we're at, as devotees, we'll be like, Krishna, I want your devotional service. I don't want liberation. You know? So that's what I thought. And there's also a verse by Rupa Goswami, I think, where he says, the material desire to enjoy the material world and the desire to become liberated from material bondage are considered to be two witches, and they haunt one like ghosts. As long as these wishes remain within the heart, how can one feel transcendental bliss? As long as these two wishes remain in the heart, there's no possibility of enjoying the transcendental bliss of devotional service. Yeah, Arav?
Hare Krishna. I was just thinking about what you were saying before about liberation. So in my mind, I was thinking like there's some things that are just byproducts of other things that they just happen. So when one becomes like a devotee
Yeah.
and they're fully devoted, I feel like liberation can just be just a secondary product. So bhakti is their primary focus, and then yeah, they just happen to get liberated in the process,
Mm-hmm.
which is. And then I was looking, and then I was just remembering verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita. Krishna Bhakta Nishkama Ataiva Shanta Bhakti Mukti Siddhikami Sakliya Shanta. So they say jnanis want liberation, but anybody except the Krishna Bhakta can never be at peace. So as I think that's a little bit different, but like
Wow.
being at peace is sort of a liberation of itself, kind of is what I was saying.
I think you rapped that verse. Can you send it in the chat for the
Oh
people
yes,
who can't
yeah.
rap verses? Thank you, Arav. I really liked that. And you're so right about that point. I was listening to this lecture by Amogula for a long time back, and he was talking about how if you go to a market or a mall and you see a sign that says buy one, get one free, that's kind of what bhakti is with liberation. It's like, so if you're a person and you have one product and you're like, if you buy this, you're gonna get the same one you're buying free, you have that option, and then you're like, or you just buy that and you don't get the other one. So a smart person would take the buy one get free option, just kind of like liberation coming with bhakti. Okay. Thank you, Aram. This is really helpful. Wow. How did you memorize this verse?
Actually, my friend was asking me this like at one time, and I kind of just found it one day, but by reading when and then sometimes I'm not sure why once you read a particular section a few times, just randomly when you're going somewhere and you just like recite the verse in your head, and
Mhm.
then I went back and I looked at the translation. I was like, wow, this is a pretty important verse, and then it just kind of happened, I would say.
Yeah. I'm just looking at it and I'm like, oh, it's not too hard to memorize if you look at the words. Like I'm saying like nishkama means like desireless, I've heard. And shanta means peaceful. So that means ashanta, it's not peaceful. And then bhukti, mukti, siddhi, kami is describing all the other categories like fruitive workers, gyanis, etc. It's really interesting. Thank you.
Chaitanya Charitamrita verses are like pretty simple to memorize compared to some other verse I'd say because you can like sing them in a nice tune, and also the words rhyme at the end. So,
Nice.
so yes.
Thank you. Anyone else want to share something? Yeah, Akshita, go ahead.
Hare Krishna. I really like the point from verse 7 that talked about like that the commentary gave an example of Nalakuver and Manigriva being like a recipient of Prema Bhakti. And I thought that was really important because it kind of got me thinking, I heard a previous class like a while back and they gave like the definition of Prem, like the Prabhuji that was giving the class, he gave the definition of Prem. And I have it written down. It says, when Prabhuji said, when there's every reason for the relationship to break, the bond gets stronger. So that got me thinking, like, whenever we go through difficulties, we should think of it as like an opportunity to serve Krishna. And that's like, that got me, it got me thinking, like, okay, yeah, this can lead to Krishna's like glorious affection that could turn the impossible into reality. I think that's what one of the slides says. So I thought that Prema Bhakti is so important because that could help us reach a higher goal in life. So I really like that.
Wow. I really like the way you put things. It was helpful. Yeah, Sia?
Not from this class specifically, but I was just thinking because I found it like such a interesting coincidence that like on Friday when Arjun Sakar Prabhu was giving a lecture, he was also talking about the difference from Mukti and Bhakti, and then Gaurang Darshan Prabhu, like his class, he was also talking about the four types of Mukti, and then when Youth Jam is also talking, and I was like, wow, like Krishna really wants to make sure that I know the difference between these two. I was like, oh, this is such an interesting coincidence. Yeah, that's all I was gonna say.
That's really funny. I was just thinking how aligned our scriptures and acharyas are on this topic and just appreciating that. I don't see any contradictory between like not wanting love of Krishna. You know, that's just the main thing. And they're keeping it the main thing again and again. So I really, really like that. Thank you, Sia. I also heard that when Krishna liberates the two Arjuna trees, it's compared to let's say you are a poor person and you don't really have money, but then you become a rich person. So now you have a lot of money, but now you see another poor person on the street. So you're able to better empathize with that poor person because you were once in that condition. So because Krishna is bounded by the ropes, he's able to empathize with the trees who are bounded in Nand Maharaj's courtyard. So because he himself is bounded, it's like he himself was poor. Now he's gonna get out of the ropes. So he's able to empathize with the trees who are actually devatas and have been cursed by Narad Muni. So he's able to empathize. So he's freeing them of their misery because he understands how it feels to be bounded by something. So I found that interesting. Wanted to share. All right. Anyone else before we end off for today? Chaitanya Dhanam, do you want the last word?
Well, thank you, Manya, for leading the discussion and also beautifully presenting, well, half of the Damodar Ashtakam commentary. The other half I did. But in general, this was a really rewarding experience, I think, over the last month. So I'm also grateful to everyone who joined Youth Jam, and I'm sure they also got something out of it because, as I like to point out, the association is really valuable in my opinion. So being able to join here every week during Kartik was really helpful in my opinion. And it's kind of sad that it's over, but it's also uh, reassuring in a way because that doesn't mean Youth Jam is over. So we get to come back here every week and learn more and more about Krishna Lila scriptures, about each other, about the world, everything that's going on. So really, really grateful and happy to be here as always. So thank you everyone for joining Youth Jam. Thank you for sharing and participating. It really means a lot. And we'll see you back here at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. Haribol.